Good morning. Good morning. Apologies for us being 2 minutes delayed. I was just making sure that I had everything I needed for today's show. Good morning to you, Lori. How are you?
Thank you for saying that. It was actually because me and the guests were already talking about everything. So Lauren's taking the hit. I'm not letting her because I was already into the minutia of today's show. So that's really why we're 2 minutes late. I'm taking the blame for that. Hello, everybody. Lauren, wasn't last week just unbelievable? I think I am still just thinking all of it through. And to those of you who were here last week, you'll know if you missed last week, when you get a chance throughout the show, throw last week's in the chat so people that missed it can see it. I just think that was one of the most packed, inspirational, and phenomenal discussions we had. I mean, they all are, but that one was just like on steroids, as the expression goes. And so I think that's just a keeper. And good morning, Emma. I just sent you an email, Emma. I'm making an announcement. I'm asking you to be on the show. So I just asked you. I'm going to tell you while you're right there. September 6th. Oh, you got it. Yes. Okay. That's my announcement. Amazon. I was doing some last minute booking this morning, catching up on everything. Okay, I'm a talkative little thing this morning, Lauren. Let me pass it to you. It's not my time to be chatting up the storm. It's your time. You take it away, Lauren.
I'm sure everyone's already heard my little spiel. So,
Well, in fact, we're going to have a day where we can see if a guest can actually say what you say. I bet you they can't.
a frequent flyer, that's going to be the challenge. So, you guys get ready.
Yeah, exactly. How many words can you remember of what Lauren says? We'll have like be the Lauren day, right?
That's right.
Okay, take it away because we got a lot going on today.
Will do. I'm excited for today's guest as well. So, let me jump in. Good morning again, everyone. Oh, we've got a quasi-packed house, Lori. It's going to be a good one.
Oh,
My My name is Lauren Simpson. I'm with the SBDC, or the Small Business Development Center, and we are a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country. We offer no-cost services to local small businesses, and we're able to do so because your tax dollars have already taken care of our fees. So again, we're offering premier services and trainings and resources for free, all because your tax dollars have already taken care of our fees. For the Los Angeles network, which is the network that we represent, you'll see that we have various locations throughout the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. Those are our service areas. You'll see that we have physical locations in Camarillo and Santa Clarita, Pasadena, all the way out to Laverne, throughout Los Angeles, South Bay, down into Long Beach. For those services and resources I mentioned, here's a deeper dive. We offer no-cost business advising. So that means you're able to sit one-on-one with one of our business experts. And we're talking about experts who, yes, have gone to school maybe and retrieved information that way, but they've also been in the game decades for some of our experts. So you're talking about people who have, yes, learned how to do what they do or what they specialize in, but they've also had years and years and years of experience to help you. We also offer virtual trainings, which are comprehensive workshops that assist you in beginning your business, adapting, and growing. So be sure to get in contact with us today. You might even be able to contact us and sit with our guru of all numbers, Miss Lori Williams, to assist you with all your financials. But be sure to get in contact with us. You can contact us by phone, 866-588-7232, or you can go online, smallbizla.org/new client. Now, if you've reached us and you're outside of our service area, that means you're outside of the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, or Ventura counties. Please go to americasSBDC.org/find your SBDC. Lori, I'm going to stop my screen share really quickly, do some housekeeping. Let's be sure to put all questions into the Q&A. That way, as Lori is going through the presentation or today's chat, she knows where to find questions relevant to the topic at hand. And then check the chat for any useful links and information that we would like to share with you. With that, Lori, I'm going to throw it over to you. Good morning again.
Good morning to you. Okay, I'm going to start out with my myth buster. Now, my myth buster, I could go on for way longer than I want to go on. So I'm just going to do a mention of it. And where this is coming from, as always, a lot of time the myth busters come up from the conversations I'm having during the week. What I'm about to talk about is not a new conversation. I have it all the time. But what's interesting is that this last 2 weeks, I literally had this conversation 4 times with someone. And in one day, I had the conversation back to back with somebody saying words to me with almost the identical words, just a different industry in place. So I want to just mention this. And then if you're not following or it's something that you're maybe experiencing, shoot an email to Lauren. We can have a one-on-one, or even shoot an email to Lauren and ask me to elaborate a little bit more, and I'll do it next time. But what it has to do with is this belief, this false belief. My industry is based on the lowest price. Therefore, I have no choice but to match my competitors' prices. As we know, everything always has a little bit of truth in it. Now, your industry could be based on the lowest price, and you may feel as though you have no choice to match the competitors' prices. But what I'm here to explain is if you're matching the competitor's price without really knowing what your cost structure is, and if you can, I'm going to use the word afford to match the competitor's price, you may be doing it at the expense to yourself, meaning you're not making as much profit. But unfortunately, what I'm seeing, scary stuff, is you're making no profit. And so often, many times, most of the time, the small business does not understand that they actually are lowering their prices and losing money. They may be checking the number between the sell price and the cost if they're buying something and reselling it, but they're not considering the overhead into it. So what I teach, and I teach this in the financial series this week, I'm going into session 2, I'm going to be discussing it, but I also work with people one-on-one to look at their overall, I call it their cost structure. And I'm doing this because I actually draw out a circle to help explain it, where I show them a circle and say, this percentage out of 100% of revenue is the amount for the production. This is the amount for the expenses, and this is the amount for the net income. This is the structure, the cost structure you're currently operating under. You cannot change your selling price unless something else within the circle changes, a lower of the expense, a lower of a cost to produce. So when we look at industries that are based on the lowest price, we have to identify, can we compete in that industry? If you're trying to compete against a large corporation, you may not have the same economies of scale. You don't have the same cost structure. And if you're competing against a smaller company, you don't know if they're even profitable. I've had the weird situation where somebody says, well, my competitor is, charging this. How are they able to do it? I'm in confidentiality with numbers, but I know the competitor I just spoke with, and they're not making money either. I always like to express, and like if you look at when gas prices go up, say there's an announcement gas prices are going up, the next day, in almost the next day, you'll hear that all airlines are increasing their ticket price. Now, I'm not saying nobody works in a monopoly in the world. I'm not saying that, but it's not that they're working under a monopoly. It's just they all know that if they don't increase the prices accordingly, their profit margins are going to be shrunk. So they actually increase the prices, just like you'll hear, oh, the cost of a tin can's going up, and that everybody that has a tin can for the product increases the price. What small companies do is when prices increase, they actually decrease to get the business at their own peril. And they don't recognize that they're hurting each other. They're just trying to get the business. So what I'm saying is all this is true, and it can be traumatic to a small company, but the option is not to sell below and not make a profit. You're better off going to the beach for that day. So you have to identify, can I do something to set myself apart from marketing? Can I find my own little niche where my cost structure works? And I tell people, basically learn your cost structure and hold it up, and then do a 360 and look around the outside world and say, where is it that I can match my cost structure, what I need to charge, with enough customers, enough demand in the marketplace? And if you can't, you get out of that business and get into one that's more profitable. As a last note, please remember, and I tell you this a lot, when you look at your company, it is you, your hands, you, that made yourself money, not that specific business model. Don't get so tied to the business model that you're afraid to leave it and you stick with it to your own peril. Know that you are the entrepreneur, you are the skilled person. If this industry is not working, if you can't compete and make a profit, get out of it and get in something else. That's the benefit of being a small company. Don't let that be a liability. Let the agility and flexibility be your golden ticket to finding your placement within the marketplace, not the ball and chain. Okay, guys, enough on that. I'll bring it up again if I need to, because it's a key point that everybody needs to understand. Financial series, once again, I go through this every single month. I have quite a large amount of people that join. Session 2 and session 3 is all about what I'm talking about, figuring out that cost structure. And then for upcoming, I have Deborah Darris coming on next week. We're going to talk about AI. We're going to talk about, should you use it in the business? Could you use it in the business? How would you use it in the business? And we just have an announcement that Emma's coming on September 6th. So I didn't put her in yet, but now we know that. So with that, I want to get into today. We have our repeat champion. I'm going to call her my repeat champion. Xiomara Palma is the founder and CEO of Solvit HR and is a certified human resources professional with over 15 years of HR experience across multiple industries. Xiomara specializes in helping small business remain in compliance with workplace regulations. And I like to say that today, there is no such thing as a small business when it comes to workplace regulations. You know, back in the old days, especially, as everybody knows, I talk about it a lot, I grew up in the country, you didn't have the kind of regulations affecting the smaller companies like you do today, okay? And with that, you have all of these regulations that are even, really the sole prop that's selling at the farmer's market has some regulations they have to come under. So we as business owners have to be very aware, and it's gotten so confusing. I don't even touch it at all. It's just way over my head. I'm not staying up on all of the laws and regulations, but luckily we have Xiomara. Thank you so much for coming back on the show today.
Thank you, Lori, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you all, as always.
I just have to believe that you have to be pretty much glued to every single regulation, because I feel as though it reminds me of what happened during the PPP and the EIDL. Why I had to watch congressional hearings, legislation, because I would sleep and wake up and go, oh my God, there's a new rule that changed. Does it seem like that is happening?
It does seem like that. Normally we have new employment laws that go into effect the first of every year. However, we have seen, more and more throughout the years, the most recent years. We also get an update mid-year. So around July, August, we'll see some changes to regulations as well. And this year's no exception to that.
I know. And it also seems to me that, and you just might be my perspective, but the changes are affecting smaller and smaller companies. Almost like I feel like, especially in California, there's this focus on the relationships in the small companies, the independent contractors, the employees. It's like this strong relationship. And that is being almost the part that they're focusing on. And that's where a lot of the new laws are coming out. Do you see that same thing?
I do see that same thing. So small businesses are being treated as corporations now, right? So same laws apply. That's what that means. Now it's like, before you used to be able to have like a little bit more wiggle room to say, well, I'm a small business, and this is like, going to impact my business if I implement XYZ in compliance with certain laws. Now, now there's hardly any exceptions, right? So we're seeing laws for HR applying to small businesses, even with one employee nowadays. Yeah. So
Oh, do you know, I have to be honest, in my CFO turnaround days, my solution a lot of times, because we were dealing with money, was to just not hire over what was it, 40? I think it was 40 or something like that. I can't even remember.
Yeah.
And that was like, well, let's get rid of the last person and, stay underneath this 40 because it's not going to be, that's out the window. That's not even a concept anymore.
Or classify them as independent contractors, right?
That's my favorite thing. Let's classify everybody's an independent contractor. Call it a day, that was my strategy. It was.
Yeah.
So we need to start with that, because you know what? I'm always straight up about this. I am not a person that is happy about where AB5 is going, because I'm a finance person, right? Mm-hmm. And my goal is to help companies that are very small, make money, get to where they need to be, have the flexibility. And AB5 has really hindered that flexibility. But it's a fact. It's a law. It's a serious law. Mm-hmm. We have to take it seriously. Mm-hmm. It's getting more and more focus on every day. So I think we got to come back and, what's the expression, beat the dead horse. We got to bring up AB5, and I'd like to bring it up from the beginning, because I know when we bring it up in the middle of our conversation, there's a ton more to discuss on it. So if we just discuss AB5, that's fine. And so I think we need to start with, what is AB5? I'm going to let you explain that. And please note that I also, and you maybe hear it, people get confused thinking, oh no, I voted that away with Uber. They get
yeah, no.
So can you just give us understanding for those who are like, what's AB5? No, that was gone a long time ago. We got rid of that. Tell us what it is.
So the story, this AB5 really got overshadowed by COVID-19, right? Because it went into effect January of 2020, and then by February, March, we were preparing for COVID, and it just really got kind of like shoved under the rug. But really what AB5 did is that it came up with a new test to classify independent contractors. They created the ABC test, in addition to the already existing Borrello test, which focuses more on like exertion of control over a worker. So this ABC test, what it did is created 3 prongs that someone needs to meet in order to be classified as an independent contractor. So they have to the employer or the hiring entity does not have to exert any control over the work that's being performed by this person. B, this person needs to be outside of the same line of business as your business or as your industry. And then C, this person needs to be, either established independent contractor, or established business, or established in their occupation, right? So what that means is either you need a business license or some sort of like certification or accreditation that this person basically stands on their own. If that person meets all those 3 criteria, then they potentially, let's say potentially, they potentially can be classified as a true independent contractor. Now, this law carved out so many exceptions, and the following year too, in 2021, there was like another law that went into effect, AB 2257, that basically was intended to carve out so many exceptions because it was so stringent that nobody can meet satisfy the criteria to be classified as independent contractor. So, so that's been in effect since 2020. We're dealing with that. And, when people think that they can classify someone as an independent contractor, you always have to go, even when there's exceptions to the rule, all those exemptions or those professions that were exempt from the ABC test. Now you got to take the Borrello test and go, okay, well, they're exempt from the ABC test. Let's take a look at the Borrello test, which focuses on control over the person, over the worker, and how the work is being performed. Does this person meet this criteria? So it's
Yep. Yeah, and in that, and if I say anything that's incorrect, you'll come back and say, no, Lori, that's not correct, okay? So the Borrella test, just for those in the audience to kind of get their head around this, that was a federal test. So that's for all the states. The AB5 is specific to California. The having control, if I can use the word again, you can kind of change, you got kind of control over how much you have control, right? So you can work with that, right? I feel as though the most challenging part is B, which is the person cannot be engaged in your usual course of business. And I know on their website, when they first came up with it, I watched this before when it was a bill thinking, oh no, they're not going to pass this in 2019, and was surprised. But on the website, they had this example that if somebody was making cakes and somebody in their home created a recipe for them, that's the usual course of business. They got to be an employee. If somebody came in to fix their computer, well, you're not in the business of the computer. Well, that example lends it to like anyone who touches anything you could potentially be doing. And so I think we really need to delve into that area, because I hear people say, I'm going to use this just as an example because it's one to get our head around, but I only have somebody coming in on a Friday to teach one yoga class. That doesn't count. It's only for 1 hour. Take it away from there. Let's get some clarity on that.
Yeah. So yeah, you hit nail on the head. So, if it's anything related to the business, of, you running that business, it's going to come back as that person should be an employee and not classified as an independent contractor. I'll give an example of a client that was being audited by EDD, actually, on their independent contractors. They were in the apparel business. So what they did is they were like import, clothing, and then they will also have a part of their business where they sold makeup and cosmetics and anything like that. So they hire these models as independent contractors to try on the makeup and to do like some social media work for them. And when they were audited by EDD said, no, that is within the course of your business. They are performing work that really essentially ties to your same industry. Although they had their own website, they were established business. They basically, and on the surface, when we looked at it, they met the ABC test criteria, but EDD said no. You're utilizing their work to do marketing for your business. It's within the line of your own business, within the course of your business, and therefore they should have been employees. And now you owe about $20,000 worth of payroll taxes.
Okay.
So
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is really important to make sure. I think this is the most difficult. I agree with you. This is the most difficult of the criteria to meet because, because a lot of times we want to subcontract some of our work, right? If we're already established business or we're already established independent contractor, we want to subcontract, some of our work. But if they're within the same line of business, or if it looks like they're within the same line of business, likely you probably are best hiring them as an employee, bringing them on board as a W-2 employee, and not take the risk, of being audited and all that stuff.
I was going to say, this is why I don't touch this stuff. That one, thank you so much for sharing that, because if you were to ask me, do I think if I was to guess, I would have said, absolutely no, they're models. They're just trying on. There's no way that they would, claim them having to be an employee. So these things, and I've seen this before in seller's permits and labor and stuff like that, where these weird judgments get made that intuitively you would not think. So I think now is a good time to mention something else after your story. And that is, precedents. How, when we have a law around long enough, you start to see the rulings, and then you have these precedents to kind of understand how it's going to be interpreted going forward. And this is true in, as an enrolled agent, IRS, this is true precedents in law, that's across the board. But I feel as though we're in a very, and you change what I'm saying if it's not correct in any way, but I feel like we're in a really kind of weird spot, because the law, it doesn't have a lot of clarity. It's still confusing, and we don't have a lot of precedents. But now the EDD is really starting, after COVID settled down, to do more auditing is what I meant to say. And so we need the audience to understand how these precedents play in, and how the law is still being interpreted, if you will, and correct anything I said if I didn't word it properly.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of audits from EDD. A lot of, one of the things that businesses sometimes forget, or it may not register on the radar when they outsource or they bring an independent contractor. They say, oh, okay, well, this person, I pay them their fees. They're the ones negotiating their own rate. I've got nothing to do with anything work related for them. Well, you're missing that one of the criteria from EDD is to actually make sure that the employer or the hiring entity registers this independent contractor with EDD for, this is done for child support registry purposes. So California reports, not only does it have its own child support registry, but it also reports to the National Child Support Registry. And this is a requirement of all employees and also all independent contractors. So if you're a business who's hiring an independent contractor, your obligation is to make sure you report or you register this independent contractor with EDD within 20 days of you engaging with business with them.
See, and that was something we were talking before the show. I was not aware. I knew about the employee because, that's been a situation for some time. And when we're talking about child support, this is to help people register to understand if somebody is not paying their child support and they became an employee because you garnish wages. That was the whole purpose. It's on a federal as well, and the states acted on it. I'm not aware of all states, but I know that this is kind of unique with California that I've heard about, where they're also requiring an independent contractor to be registered with the EDD. Now, the fascinating, and I'm not making any other statement, I'm just going to use the word fascinating, is technically they can't basically garnish an independent contractor's wages, if you will, because there's wages involved. But what it does do, and I want to be really clear in my verbiage right now, because I want the audience to understand this, so I'm going to be really clear. By you reporting that it's an independent contractor, which you must do within 20 days, I think you say, the EDD already has kind of a notification that you have classified an independent contractor under your company, which I'm not saying they're going to pull up that list and start auditing from. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that this information is already within a government agency, and to have an awareness. Did I say that okay?
Yes, you did. And that's the important thing to understand when you hire an independent contractor, making sure that they meet the criteria, the ABC test, and also the Borrello test. That's why it's important, because in case of an audit, this is what they will look at. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, this person is either exempt or they pass the ABC test. Now they're going to look at, okay, do you tell them when to report to work or what hours to work? Do you provide them equipment to conduct business? Are they on site? I see this a lot. They'll say, oh, businesses will say, I have an independent contractor. They work at our office a couple days out of the week. Well, I mean, they're already like within your facility, interacting with your employees. I mean, that line is like so thin, right? Yeah. We're already, almost crossing that line. So those are the things you want to look at. Do they negotiate their own rates? Do you have a contract with them, stipulating what the relationship is, the scope of work, their company's information? Do they have their own business card? Are they established business, or do they use your email system or your network? That's another one that I see a lot. This person is an independent contractor, but they have like our own, our domain for the email.
Yep. And I see that quite a bit in the olden days, if I can just refer to that. A lot of times, even back in the day when I did a lot of CFO, they wanted you to have their company so it looked like it was, all together as one. And so the company owners are wanting these independent contractors to use their email. But even for me, I'm like, no, I don't use anybody's email but my own. That's it. I do not use anybody's email, because this is now becoming a defining, not that alone, but that's one of the ones. Right. Just to create some understanding of how important this is, and I'm going to go down a different road, but I want to jump for a second. And I think the audience needs to understand that if you get audited and it's determined that you're misclassified, lots of really bad things happen to you financially. I'm just going to say that. And I don't think they totally aware about like breaks and all these other things that can come back to you. So can you walk through if the worst thing happens and they said should not have been an independent contractor, what can happen to you and your company?
Oh, Lori, why do you make me the bad guy? This is what I signed up for.
I don't touch HR anymore.
I know. I own it.
You go for it. You're not the bad guy. You're helping people to make sure
yes. Absolutely. We don't want you to end up in these situations. But first and foremost, it will be non-compliance with workers' comp insurance, right? So every employer, even if you have just one employee, is required to have workers' comp insurance. So you not having or providing workers' comp insurance to an independent contractor, that's a violation of the law. If they don't truly meet the criteria of independent contractor, they should have been an employee. That's a $10,000 penalty. And can escalate potentially up to 100K. Okay, so that's one. You also have potentially if they worked any overtime, right? So if they were performing work and then at any time they were working over 8 hours in a day or over 40 hours in a week, which is the definition of overtime in California, you could potentially owe back wages going back to 3 years of overtime. If they were not taking their meal periods and their rest breaks, that's potentially an hour every single time they miss either one. So potentially up to 3, right? Assuming someone works 8 hours, they would be entitled to 2 rest breaks and 1 meal period. If they have not taken those during the day due to work, or work prevented them, or they were not afforded the opportunity to take one, they potentially have 3 hours of premium pay per day that they could be owed. Again, going back 3 years. You have payroll taxes, right? So because they were an independent contractor, you didn't file payroll taxes, you didn't pay for unemployment insurance as you're required to. So that you're gonna owe back whatever time EDD decides to go, and then in addition to that, they'll add 15% penalty to those owed taxes and owed wages. So now it can add up.
Yeah. Does that also, like, I know if you mess up your payroll, even though you made a mistake, it comes under technically a civil liability and fraud. Corporation doesn't help you at all being incorporated. Does this also, and you may not know this may be a legal question, I believe, I could be wrong, that this also can be considered civil liability and go around the corporation seal, the veil, is that correct? Do you know?
I don't, I don't. I know that, I know that there could be civil penalties for wages as well, but that's something more on the legal side of things. But but the penalties, there could potentially be civil penalties as well for owed wages.
It could, because I get people say things like that, and the reason I wanted to bring it up, and I'm not completely sure I know what payroll it is they say, but I'm incorporated. I'll just shut the company down, and I'm like, no, this one will follow you, is what I say, and going back, I want to just go back to one thing before we go forward. When you were talking about the registration of the independent contractor with the EDD within 20 days, what if it's like, I'm just me and I'm a consultant, I'm just me, right? And I bring somebody in to work on my computer, they're technically an independent contractor, and I only do it once. Do I have to go into EDD without having even an account set up? Well, I guess I would, because I'd be in California and I'd be my personal. Would I have to do that for just once?
So it would be, yeah, I mean, it would be. Yes, you would need to do it even for just once, right? The same thing as, as when you're filing the 1099s, right? For anyone, even if you hire an attorney for just a few hours, right? Yeah. So as long as it exceeds a minimum of $600, right? That's the criteria. So if you hire someone to come work on your computer and it's like $200, then, you don't have to do it. But if it's something that's going to exceed $600 within a year, calendar year, then you would need to report them.
That makes perfect sense, because like even for your accountant, if you pay them over 600, they got to be 1099. Accountants and lawyers, I always tell my accountant, do your own 1099. You're the only one. Do it yourself. I always tell them that. So what you do is, and somebody was asking, is there a form? You have to go on the EDD website and file on the EDD website. Would that be correct?
Yes, there is the form. I can share the link. I can share the link later, but there is the form that you're required to fill out and provide to EDD.
Gotcha. Okay, so now while we're still on that topic, I'm going to bring another one up there. You're going to go, Lori, I know you will. This is the one I've never been able to get my head around how it even plays out. So you can even just say, I don't even want to touch it. This whole bona fide thing, when is it really a bona fide business? I've asked lawyer after lawyer, like, how can it be a bona fide business? If it's the usual course of business, it doesn't matter if I'm bona fide. So you'll have to say, what in the world Lori talking about with bona fide? And then you could say, Lori, why'd you ask me that? That's like the can of worms, because I think it is, but you may have a better understanding of it. I find bona fide very confusing.
Lori, why'd you ask me that question?
Yeah. Because I thought you were going to finally answer it. It's just a bizarre thing to even determine. So when I ask it, I'm going to start with this. When this all came about, right? When it first came about back in 2020, 2021, people were trying to say, but I'm a bona fide business, so you can hire me as an independent contractor. And that's gone around and round in the trucking thing, So then it came out and said, well, you're bona fide if you're really in business and you're doing your own marketing. But then it was like, no, it doesn't count if it's the usual course of business. So I was always trying to figure out, when can you really get away with, if you will, I shouldn't use those terms, but really have somebody as an independent contractor. And then for me, I'm not in California, so I'm not quite, under that. But when I was, I didn't want to be paid as a employee because of my company. And so when I was an adjunct professor, I had to, I had to have this W-2, and it was always a problem because you got W-2s competing with your company, and you got to make sure you have enough revenue to still be a company, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's where this bona fide come from. Is bona fide like just forget it and don't even try to be a bona fide company, or what is it? I'll let you take whatever part you want.
I think so there's all the business to business side of like AB5, right? So obviously, like businesses that are subcontracting other businesses, you have to make sure that they still meet the criteria of the ABC test, right? So otherwise, your subcontractor employees become your employees, and right. You take on that liability, that liability for workers' comp, that liability for any wages that they didn't get paid for. So really, when you're doing business to business transactions, or you're subcontracting, you have to make sure that they still meet the ABC test criteria.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
situation come up, I always get the legal documents, whenever anybody has a problem that comes to me with the legal documents.
Yeah.
And this was not a legal one from the government, but they were a subcontractor, and the main contractor was giving them a form to fill out to confirm that they had workman's comp. But their people they were hiring were independent contractors, so they didn't have workman's comp. So they Oh, exactly. Yikes, right? So the question that was posed to me is, well, what do I put on this form? Well, it's like you can't lie and say you have your workman's comp, but you're kind of admitting that you didn't have employees, and the main contractor was wanting to make sure they were covered, so the lawsuit didn't go up. I mean, like I said, this stuff is really, really complicated. It gets really overwhelming. And one of the times that I saw an issue is during the pandemic unemployment insurance, when independent contractors were filing for their version and they accidentally, unknowingly, put their client's name as the company, and EDD started auditing, and I saw some of the letters come out on auditing on that as well.
Yeah.
So it's really something that you have to have an awareness. And I'm just going to make one note financially on this. And this is why, and I speak to it a lot, where I actually do a financial model for people where I show them, even if you're doing a yoga class one day a week, by the time you do the employee, you may be better off closing your shop that week, because there is a huge jump between just you and your first employee, where your revenue has to get so much higher to put you back here. And that's why growth is not always the correct thing to do. It's not always. People have been trained as entrepreneur. I need to grow. And I'm like, no, maybe not. Maybe you need to stay the same so you're not more tired and more broke. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I really think, like your example of the workers' comp insurance, that this is the stuff that can really either make or break your business, right? So the compliance or non-compliance, could really make or break your business. And, a lot of times I will see, business owners that will say, well, I'll take a chance. Nothing's ever happened, through the years, but it only takes one, right? It only takes, for example, like an employee getting injured, or you have like a serious injury, and then now you have Cal OSHA coming after you, right? And then, where's your workers' comp insurance? That's the first question. Where's your policy? Gotta make sure you're in compliance with all this stuff. Like workers' comp is highly regulated. So you need to have, your own policy. You need to provide the correct information to the employee should they become injured. Cal OSHA can come and audit you. Their fines and penalties, they have increased recently up to over 100K. They can come after. So this, when I say this is the stuff that can either make or break your business, I'm really talking about the hefty penalties for non-compliance.
Now, the IRS, once they may check, and then they have the right to go back retroactive and check previous tax returns? Is it the same with AB5? Is they're like, okay, well, what happened in 2019 or 2020 doesn't matter? Will they go back previous years as well once they start?
They do. Yeah.
I thought so.
Yeah, they do go back. So this is important to, I can't stress it enough. That's what we're here. I can't stress it enough. Make sure you are in compliance. Safest thing to do if you are not sure. And if you're, not able to talk to an attorney or able to talk to an expert in the field, safest thing, best practice would be to classify this person as a W-2 employee. But again, you got to take into consideration your financials, as you're saying, right? Because there is a lot of cost that's going to come with like classifying someone as an employee, right? There's your workers' comp, there's your payroll, your payroll taxes. And there's a lot that's going to come, that's going to impact your finances.
I tell people this a lot on the show, and I speak to it when I'm consulting, and I don't think people really want to believe this, but it's true. So I have the fortunate of being able to see lots of numbers, right? I mean, that's all I do is look at people's financials. So I get to see behind the scenes on companies every single day. And because I've been with the SBDC for maybe like 15, almost 20 years, even in my private industry, that was bigger companies. And, I saw so many because I was doing turnarounds, but now I get massive numbers. Okay, what I'm saying thing is, do you know the most profitable companies are usually the sole person? You know, it doesn't have to be a sole prop. It could be an S corp like I am, just one person, but the person selling their own skills. That is the most profitable companies I see. And it's been, people have been trained to think it's really the ones with all the employees and the big, no, big when you get way up. But, you know, that's why I say sometimes just starting and staying small. But one area, and once again, I'm throwing you something that you can say, Lori, stop doing this. But I know there was all these carve outs, right? And I don't want to get into all the carve outs, but I want to touch one specifically. And that's the, I'm going to call it the web design, the marketing. I know there was something to carve out if somebody's doing writing or marketing, because a lot of times people that get hired for marketing, they may be getting into their email marketing. I mean, they're touching the stuff. And now you scared me with the model story, right? So I feel like I got to come back and ask about marketing, because that is something that, like, I might hire a marketing person, right? And so this something that the true solopreneur, as they're called, may have somebody come in. How's marketing and those type of skills treated?
Yeah, so marketing is exempt from the ABC test. Okay, so so when we would look at hiring a marketing person, we would then be relying on the Borello test, right? So as long as we are not controlling any of their work, we're not telling them what hours to work, we're not telling them how to create content. They have their own, so they're basically essentially just providing a service to you. And you know, you're not the one controlling any aspect of their work. I did have a client once that I think it was a marketing person or a graphic designer, I'm not sure, but this client required them to do those huge banners, and the independent contractor didn't have the equipment to print it, so they would use their client's printer to print the huge banners. And I said, oh yeah, just right there. It's right there.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't touch your email, I don't touch your computer, I don't touch anything. I am a arm's length. We used to always say in finance, make sure it's an arm's length transaction. You know, that was one of our phrases that we would use. Now, to clarify, in the marketing situation, if you pay them more than $600, you still got to register with the EDD. So we got to make sure we're clear on that. And also to pick up a question that Brenda had, when you pay somebody over $600, you have to have a 1099 filed on them. So I always tell everybody, and Xiomara, you can correct me if you don't do this, but I say internally make a rule that before you write any independent contractor $1, make them fill out the W-9, because it could creep up and suddenly you're over 600. It's the end of the year and you don't have the address information to contact them. So rather than trying to keep track, just before you pay them, because they're going to fill it out because they want their check, get a W-9 on everybody. And keep in mind, guys, the W-9 then has a 1065 that gets filed with the IRS, which informs the IRS that this person, this independent contractor, got money to make sure that they put it on their taxes. That's the whole purpose of the 1099 is for the IRS to know who's getting money to make sure it's taxed.
Yeah, and actually, I think on their newest revision of the form, they actually have like a little checkbox where you have to indicate if you did provide a 1099 to them or not, something like that. Something to the effect of like, did you file a 1099? I don't know. There's something. I remember looking at it maybe last year sometime, because they do have a revision of the 1099 for independent contractor purposes. But they did have like a little checkbox that indicates whether or not the employer provided the 1099 to the independent contractor or did not. I can't remember.
I think you're right.
Something like that.
for me on the IRS side, I feel like I'm getting a new form announcement every single day. So the IRS is constantly doing, the employee credit and all that. They're constantly catching up with this as well. And I may be wrong on what I'm about to say, but I think, and it's an IRS thing, I should know, but I think I'm correct that if you have an attorney, it doesn't even matter if it's less than 600, you still got a 1099. I think attorneys carved out as one of those, you got a 1099 even if you pay them $1. I don't know why that is. I can't tell you the reasoning, but I know that that's one of the rules as well. Okay, before we end, I want to make sure you told me at the beginning of the show about something I had no friggin' idea. So here you're going to be the bad guy again. No, you are going to be the best person because you're informing us. I was shocked to hear this. I didn't know it existed, so I didn't even have her go into it. Tell us, you know what I'm going to ask you. Tell us the story.
Yes, for everyone to there is this new ordinance that went into effect in the city of Los Angeles for freelance worker protection. So basically, in a nutshell, what it is that businesses that contract independent contractors based in the city of within boundaries of the city of Los Angeles, I should say, because that's a whole nother that's a whole nother set trying to figure out if you fall within the boundaries of the city of Los Angeles. But within boundaries of the city of Los Angeles, you have to have a contract per the ordinance. You have to have a contract with the independent contractor, and then you have to make sure that you are compensating them either within the time frame that contract indicates, and then if it doesn't indicate in the contract, it must be done within 30 days of them rendering the services to you. So the whole purpose of the ordinance is to make sure that people are getting paid, and to make sure that there is an agreement in place for them. And the agreement has to include things such as, I don't have it memorized here, but I will look at their name, mailing address, phone number, email address if that's available, itemized services and the value and the rate that they're going to charge, the due date of payment. And again, if it's not indicated, then they have to be paid within 30 days.
Okay, so I gotta, oh my God. Okay. So that means that if business to business, if you agree to pay in 30 days and you don't pay in 30 days, they could basically go to the city to get their collections rather than just do collectibles. So my old strategy, I'm sorry being honest here, but as CFOs, we often did this. We just, said, well, call next week. We think we have the check, but we're running out of money. The city now is going to help you get collections if you don't get paid within the time. That's correct. Really amazing to me.
Yeah. Just because we have seen an influx of people working as independent contractors, right after the pandemic. I think we saw quite an increase in people that became independent contractors and being able to work remotely and doing their own thing. But with that, I think the city, both the city and the state, have seen that people are not getting paid for either not getting paid for their services or not getting paid on time. So that's where this ordinance really stems from. And just a few years back, California also did adopt something similar as well, where independent contractors did have the right to file a complaint for owed wages as well. So
amazing.
It is amazing. So just want everyone to be in compliance. If you are based within boundaries of city of Los Angeles and you are hiring independent contractors, make sure, I always say this even before this ordinance went into place, but make sure you have an agreement, you have a contract. Now that we have the criteria that must be covered in that contract as well. And then making sure that you're paying and compensating people within either the time frame that's stipulated in that contract or no later than within 30 days of this independent contractor rendering their services to you. There are a few exceptions. So if you're hiring an independent contractor that has employees, and then that person, it doesn't count, right? Because they're now treated, they're now a business. Or if you're also already in an occupation where a contract is required, such as, for example, attorneys. I know sometimes, like for engineers, things like that, if an attorney is already required from your occupation by law, then you're exempt from the rule here. So yeah, so there is quite a bit. I just want everyone to know, if you have questions, feel free to reach out. I feel free to reach out. I put my contact information in the chat, and then also do advising with the SBDC as well, if you guys are interested in learning more. I know this is a vast topic. We can't. I was telling Lori before the show, I'm like, I feel like we've done like 3-4 of these, but like I feel like we only scratch the surface every single time, because it's just such a vast topic.
Yeah, you were right on point, because the next thing I was going to say is, hey, everybody, take a deep breath. Now, the good news is she's connected with the Pasadena SBDC. You can get an appointment with her. You can go over this stuff. You give webinars. Are you still doing your webinars with Pasadena?
We have one that's coming up. We don't have an exact date, but we're looking at September sometime.
Okay,
to schedule one.
So Annie, you owe us a date when it's a date, and I'll announce it on the show, because that would be a good way to get people involved too, to understand this. Because what happens, and correct me if I'm saying this incorrectly in any way, but it's not that at this point in time that ADD is aggressively going out and auditing everybody. It's more like if something comes up, like if somebody complains, or if something comes in to clue them in. At this point, it's not like that, yes, at some point they could be checking everybody, but I don't want to give this impression like you're a number and every single person is going to be audited. Yeah. Just like when I said with the pandemic insurance, you get somebody complaining, they get another reason, but they are getting data, so they have it. So you may be under the radar and not get audited, very likely not get audited, but they also are getting more aggressive, and I think they're hiring more people. Am I correct on that, to aid to the auditing department?
Yes. Yeah. So they're auditing really. I mean, it really stemmed out of like the pandemic, as you were saying, right? So people like mistakenly reporting as independent contractors instead of like filing for the pandemic unemployment assistance, they were filing for regular unemployment, and then hence they were getting those questions about who's your hiring entity, or your employer, things like that. So yeah, that's really where it stemmed from. But there has been an uptick in audits. I just want people to keep that in mind. Not necessarily that you are going to be audited, but as Lori mentioned, like when things there are certain things that come up, or maybe like red flags, or just certain triggers for EDD to question, like okay, this person is an independent contractor, they haven't been reported, or this person has been reported as an independent contractor, but they've been let's take a look at this. Or sometimes, like if other people report it, they do have a hotline too. I mean, that doesn't help, but they do have a hotline too where people can report.
You do get the disgruntled person. They say, and it doesn't cost them anything to report it. And I have had employers have previous people report them, so that happens as well. On one last question to throw out one of those carve outs, how about like a salesperson? Like, for example, there was a question about a licensed real estate salesman working under a broker's license. I have a client that has a situation. He's had been in business forever, and he has all independent contractors, and he had to go to a lawyer to make sure he was fitting all the bill for the brokers. So I don't know if just working in a broker automatically exempts you. I think you got to get very specific to make sure you're following it. You take it from there if you have any information on that.
Yeah, licensed real estate agents were a carve out from the AB5, but again, we're falling on the Barella test after that, right? So there is a carve out on AB5 for licensed real estate agents. but you also got to look at the exertion of control over a person.
Gotcha. Well,
Mhm.
I am going to first make my final summary, and then I'm going to throw it to you. And my summary is, there was this, I don't know who it was, maybe it was a Peter Drucker thing, I don't know, but he said that your biggest assets and liabilities are walking the shop floor, meaning employees, right? And I've always held on to that. And so I am just advising people. Obviously, you have to have a full awareness. That's why I'm so specific on bringing this on the show. But I'd like to add, from a financial perspective, see even engaging someone in your company for growth as a choice that should be identified financially if it makes sense. Often just saying no or increasing prices, which I talked about like maybe 3 shows ago, is a better option. So don't think that this is the necessary course to follow. Make sure first it makes financial sense. And then if it does make financial sense, make sure you have plenty of cash flow and stability within the company to support you for all these rules and regulations and to hire the professionals you may need to stay in compliance. I'm going to throw it to you now.
Yes, I can't say it. I couldn't say it better than that. I do think a lot of times, and especially, for new business, even established businesses, for new businesses, I think they're just like, such in a rush to get up and running. And then they experience all this growth and they're like, okay, I need to hire more people. Yep. But a lot of times, we fail to see the compliance aspect of it, like the implications that come with hiring employees and really taking the time to invest. I mean, we focus a lot on like the financials, we focus a lot on like marketing, we focus a lot on like operations and other things. And HR or, your employees get left as like the last thing you look at. But, we're living in the day and age of like having like taking a look at your human resources compliance. That's really like, your profit retention, basically, because you're not you're mitigating the risk of being penalized, for non-compliance and some of these things. So I do think that small businesses do need to give more priority on employee compliance or human resources compliance in order to remain.
I agree. And I think too many times, and I always say this, I see companies where the employees are getting paid more than the owners. That's because they made an incorrect financial decision to hire. So, that's one. If your employees are getting paid more than you, we want to look at the business model and see what makes sense. Well, I want to, say, first of all, to everybody, please reach out to Xiomara, and because I know there's questions I just noticed into the chat. I apologize. I don't see the chat, guys, when I'm talking, because I can only look at the Q&A. So I know that you're going to get people contacting you with questions. And I say, I've talked to a lot of people about AB5, but you've always been so impressive to me because you know what you're talking about. You don't speak unless you know. And I just feel extremely comfortable saying this is a valuable resource. I personally, you got the Lori Williams stamp of approval,
Oh, thank you, Lori. that means a lot to me.
Yeah. I very seldom give it because I'm like, if I don't know, I don't know. I don't say it, because these things matter. And there's many people that just, start saying things they believe to be true. You read the laws just like I read the laws. And so I just appreciate you so much and sharing everything, all your expertise with the audience. And even if you leave them with more questions than answers, we've done good because we've created awareness. And that's what I'm trying to do is say, hey, guys, be aware of this. Don't be harmed by it. And that's the goal. And I always say this at the end of the show, and I'm bringing you back on and we'll talk about it again. So we're going to have it once a quarter AB discussion because I'm
awesome.
We're going to have our once a quarter and maybe someday it'll settle down and we'll go on to something else. But for right now, that is the topic. Okay, Lauren, come on. Did we just make you scared to death to hire anybody?
Yeah, I'm like, no employees, no interns, no nothing.
Moral of the story, right? Moral of the story.
Yeah, no. I always say there is a certain thing about being healthy. I know, as Christine said, so nervous and nervous. There is a certain thing about healthy nervousness. You don't want to get so freaked out about the stuff. You just want to be aware of it,
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you just go through the processes, but awareness is key. So I want to thank you so much again. I'm already gonna book another date because we didn't talk about interns, we didn't talk about payroll, we didn't talk about all that stuff. But I felt like I told you at the beginning, if we just talk about AB5, I can tell from all the questions we have done what we needed to do. So to
Awesome.
everybody, join us next week. We're going to talk about AI, and this is going to be a fascinating discussion that I'm going to be asking and the audience as well to learn from that. So I want to thank you for the frequent flyers. Thank you for the questions, the interest being with the show. Thank you, Xiomara and Lauren, for all the things you do behind the scenes. So thank you for joining Small Biz Talk with Lori Williams, and I will see everybody next week. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you all. Have a nice
Bye,
day.
ladies. Take care.
Bye.
All right, everyone. Be sure to check the chat so that you can get Xiomara's contact. I've got her LinkedIn in there. There's also the IG, so Instagram's in there. I still left those links. So there's the labor link as well as the free ordinance, or sorry, the freelance ordinance. So take a look at that. And then finally, there is the link to previous shows if you'd like to view a previous show. And then also, if you'd like to get in contact with Lori, you can send me an email and I'll get you connected. All right, everybody, we will see you next week. Oh, you're so welcome. You guys are welcome. Have a wonderful Wednesday, a wonderful remainder of the week. Teresa, I'm going to put my email in there in just 1 second. And we will see you guys next week, next Wednesday at 10 a.m. for another episode of Small Biz Talk, solutions for your small business. Take care. Bye.